co-sponsored by Red Hat and OSI Consulting. My name is John Vergara. I'm Director of Marketing with OSI, and I will be facilitating today's discussion. Our speakers today are Kent Hua. He's a solutions architect from Red Hat, and Makrand Pare with OSI Consulting. I'm going to give you a little background on their bios here. So Kent is a senior solution architect at Red Hat. He's been working with us at OSI as alliance partner, leveraging the OpenShift platform and JBoss middleware technologies. He's an expert in that category. He's been working in the technology industry for over 15 years, and we're happy and pleased to have him speaking as part of our discussion today. On the other side at OSI Consulting, Makrand is a principal consultant with us. He's focused on designing and implementing middleware solutions. He's an expert in and certified in both Oracle and Red Hat, as well as Dell Boomi and MuleSoft tools. He also has about 15 years in business and has worked on quite a few projects integrating solutions across Oracle, PeopleSoft, JD Edwards, just to name a few. So we're really pleased to have these guys here speaking. They're very, very, very wise in their field. So now that you know about our speakers, let's move on to the topic of our webinar. Today's topic is titled Best Methods for Seamless Integration of Your Business Apps, both on-prem as well as the cloud. So many companies today face significant technical challenges. I'm just going to give a little background here. There are a lot of challenges out there trying to ensure that their key business applications interact and integrate seamlessly with other applications that are either in-house, on-prem, or on other clouds. So the challenge for a lot of companies out there is how do you efficiently and seamlessly integrate those systems both in a timely and a rational way across some of them being on-prem and some on your cloud platforms. So in this webinar, Kent specifically will review how to leverage integration tools such as Red Hat JBoss Fuse, which is a lightweight, flexible integration platform that enables rapid integration across your enterprise. It creates a highly scalable and robust integration platform that will adapt to your organization's ever-evolving application ecosystem. So that's a little subset on the Kent side, the product side. Makrand, talking from the implementation side, will take us through some customer implementation scenarios that support these products, so that you'll have a chance to hear some real-time, real-life stories, success stories, and best practices from an implementation standpoint. So that's the background on what you're going to hear from these guys today. I have a couple of housekeeping items before we move on to the speakers. We do have a chat functionality here on WebEx that will allow you to ask questions. So as we're going along, we're going to have a Q&A session at the end, but feel free to submit your questions as they occur to you across as we go through this presentation, and we'll add them to the queue. We've provided contact and email addresses for our speakers as well in their bios, so feel free to email them after this webinar if you have any questions at all. So I'm going to hand it off to Kent now, who will take us through the Red Hat offering. Kent, over to you.
Thanks, John. So at a high level, Red Hat is a $2 billion open source company. We've surpassed a little over $2.5 billion in the past fiscal year, but we are the world's leading solution for open source for enterprise IT. Have about 10,500 employees at the moment, but really servicing more than 90% using Red Hat technologies of the Fortune 500. So with that, as John had mentioned, we're going to go into integration components. What are some seamless ways across the cloud, whether that be on-prem, and technologies and areas of focus. So what we're going to focus around Agile Integration is along these sort of three themes around being able to, with these business applications that I have, whether that be an ERP system, a CRM system, or an expense system, all of these have APIs and ways of communicating, and they work with different data sets as well as areas where they may have different contexts as it relates to similar terms, for instance. And with that is kind of going into how do I distribute my integration, whether that's on-prem, in the cloud, or wherever that may be, possibly containerizing in this particular case, deploying Docker-like containers potentially for your integration components. And lastly, for reusability is having APIs managed so that you are able to have visibility into what services are available within your organization itself. So a high-level theme is focusing around flexibility, scalability, and reusability. When we kind of take the journey around Agile integration, we kind of start with SOA, Service-Oriented Architecture. So for those that may be familiar with it, is being able to kind of the first step in looking at our business services that we need to provide and mapping them together and making reuse of these various services as composite services. And before that is possibly point-to-point that you may already have within your organization, or even an enterprise service bus, for instance, being able to map patterns such as mediation, transformation, protocol bridging of that sort. So as we take this journey, we kind of go across the term of microservices, which is widely used throughout the industry as where one wants to achieve and kind of head towards as breaking apart those services that they have. And eventually, if I have those services, which there may be 10 to thousands of, I need a way to be able to find those services, but also measure and track the services that are being used, possibly either chargeback or just kind of limit the rate that's being called, and then kind of transition into more event-based type of application solutions. So these are more reactive type applications and being able to help facilitate rather than just push-pull, being able to just consume data at large rates and take action based on various events that may have occurred. Once we kind of continue along this journey, it's kind of like, I have all these services, I have all these integration points, where could I possibly put them? A potential area would be either I deploy them, as I do today, on various platforms on a Java EE platform, Java Enterprise Edition platform, or a alternative solution. The other alternative from a runtime is putting them in containers so that I can scale appropriately and be able to take advantage of container technology, of being able to spin up quickly and have more of an immutable method for deploying my services. That sort of leads us, when I have all this in place, leads us into more of being able to have some variation of DevOps, the methodology. Having these components in place so that I can kind of go in that direction when I move more towards DevOps and being able to have that communication barrier as I have these services deployed when I'm working between my development teams on the services that I build and my operations teams as I deploy these various ones and how these two kind of interact with each other. So we kind of go back to SOA and Enterprise Service Bus, so Service-Oriented Architecture and Enterprise Service Bus, really focused around coarse-grained services. I need business composite applications that I have and be able to say, I have these systems in play, and I need to be able to kind of pull it up to the coarse-grained level, high level, and say, this provides this particular function. I need the transportation function, and this is what this service or a group of services provide. And during SOA, were contracts focused around web services, SOAP over HTTP, for instance, or even BPEL, Business Process Execution Language, for service orchestration if I choose to go down that route. But also have explicit boundaries. These services only perform these type of functions and nothing more. And I need to make a way for these services to be exposed in a registry of some form, a UDDI, or some other areas organization may have deployed service governance, a registry, a repository of services that I had. Is sort of where SOA kind of large services. And we kind of look at what happens with SOA is the scalability is not as readily available because these are larger services and there's a lot of dependencies across these services that are put in play. So we have team coordination having to figure out, all right, if I make this change, what downstream or upstream systems are impacted? And because of that, I mentioned the registry. I have all these services that I may or may not have registered. Could be an Excel spreadsheet, could be in a UDDI form, could be in a registry of some form from built in-house or from another vendor. And that also means potentially a long software delivery cycle with my services, which in result delay the responses to the business needs. I have promotions I need to apply from the business. I have integrations, I have competition that I need to apply, and as a result of these factors, I'm not able to react accordingly on the IT side and on the development side. So we kind of transition into more of microservices. Microservices are a variation of SOA. And what is really different about microservices is they're fine-grained as opposed to coarse-grained. And I have a lot of services that I'm able to deploy as a part of it. So I have the resiliency of my resources as part of scalability as well. I can deploy, for instance, maybe 10 versions of this particular service or run 10 instances of this service, as opposed to usually SOA falling back on more of I have 2 instances and I have an active and a passive. Depending on how you deploy it, it's just every architecture is potentially different. But also failure isolation. When an SOA service kind of broke, that was it. That service was not available, and it took down a lot of components because it was coarse-grained, as I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of very different things that can be impacted as part of that service. So with a microservice, focused on a particular function and being able to purely say, instead of just transportation, how do I check inventory? How do I talk to a delivery provider and say, hey, I have a packet I need to send out? So I have those areas that I can isolate the failures and be able to have not too much dependency between my services themselves. When we talk about microservices also are a way of developing. So it's not just about shutting down my services and saying, hey, I'm just going to take a coarse-grained service and break it down into 10 different services. It also means how I develop it and the groups and individuals that may be involved as part of a microservice. So a term that was brought about was a 2-pizza team. For instance, if I can't feed my team with 2 pizzas, maybe that team may be too large. So these are very pinpointed focused teams. You have ownership across all groups, not just the SOA team or the integration team or the development team or the operations team. You have ownership across different roles within the organization, whether that be the development team, the often overlooked security team, the DBA team, operation and release team. So all these teams have ownership in a service. So when a service does go out, these people are readily available to measure that service, make sure everything is good, make sure that particular service is functional, so that you don't have finger pointing or areas where failure does happen. But another term brought about with microservices is fail often, fail fast, because I can produce a new iteration of that service very quickly, and I can deploy it very quickly, and I can scale it very quickly as well. So another way to look at microservices is a very simple, small, replaceable, independent. I have a microservice. As I mentioned earlier, I need to send shipping logistics, and I send that over. I have an API that I need to expose, and this is a very simple form of microservice. Some microservices may even have their own data set, whereas traditionally with larger services, I share a large backend database. Some microservices patterns, I have a single database for that service, which means I have isolation. But it also means it'll be distributed as well, so I need to factor that accordingly. Another way to look at it is with JBoss Fuse, as John had mentioned earlier, a product and solution within Red Hat for integration, is not just a microservice, but also microservices that can perform some simple logic, basic logic. If I need to perform some routing transformation, connect 2 different endpoints, and be able to have the components to be able to facilitate that and not really have to focus on writing code, but use elements and objects and components that can be made readily available to me, so I can focus more on the business development of my services or the functional deployment and development of my services. When we talk about more deeper view into microservices with Fuse, is kind of, you see, we have our microservices, we have the same sort of workflow that I showed earlier in the slide, and have ways of connecting, whether that be a Salesforce system or CRM that I have, or a backend database that I need to connect to, is being able to have those smart endpoints and be able to connect it. So as I mentioned earlier, so SOA focused on SOAP over HTTP, WSDL, web services, WSDLs. A lot of microservices focus around smaller, lighter weight type of executions, REST over HTTP or whatever protocol that I need, but an API that I expose. So even zooming out actually, is using Fuse to create composable services. So not just I have a system that I need to be able to send the shipping location to for that downstream system, but I have a series of services that I need to perform to gather the data that I need. Maybe I need customer information, maybe I need shipping information, maybe I need logistics or promised delivery time. I need to gather these informations from various services and be able to pull it out and expose it out in a single composable service that I can deploy in JBoss Fuse as well. So not only just microservices themselves, but composable microservices. These use enterprise integration patterns, which I'll get into a little bit later. So with JBoss Fuse itself, the core of it is the foundation is Apache Camel. It's an open source project, and being able to leverage enterprise integration patterns is where Camel has its strong suit. So not just on the development side, but also on whether that be on the deployment side. Technologies I mentioned earlier, Java Enterprise Edition, if I need to deploy it on a JBoss EAP environment. If I want to use OSGI, Apache Carafe is available. If I want to use Spring Boot, that's available. And depending on how I want to deploy it, whether that's on-prem in a private cloud, or just in the cloud. And I can use these various technologies and deploy them as necessary, whether that be on a container platform or just using the base platform itself. So I talked about Apache Camel at a high level, enterprise integration patterns. So what does that mean? So with Apache Camel, I can wire up these various services. In this example, I have a customer purchase. I need to split the orders. I need to send it to its various areas for processing. Maybe I need to send to the electronics department, other departments. I'm able to do that visually within JBoss Fuse, leveraging Apache Camel. I can use that visually, or I can write code to be able to do that. So I can write it with code, or I can break it apart using Camel context, in this particular case, Spring context, and use XML to define it as well. When we talked about pattern-based, enterprise integration patterns, so Apache Camel leverages this enterprise integration patterns developed by and written by Greg Opie and Bobby Wolf, is really patterns as it relates to integration. And this is where JBoss Fuse provides you with those pre-built functions that I mentioned earlier, rather than focusing on having to write code for aggregating content across multiple providers, normalizing the data, making sure the data is of the same type of data, enrich the data. As I mentioned earlier, for a shipping provider, I need a lot of information before I can send it downstream. Or a resequencer. Information may come, especially for event-based type of use cases, information may come at different paces, and I need to be able to put it back in sequence when I need. So that's available to me as well. The next kind of view into it is, as I mentioned earlier, composable service, having a simple pipeline for me to help deploy and secure the services that I have available to me. And that's where JBoss Fuse comes into play and helps that, either at a granular level or at a more highly composable level of chaining microservices together. So for instance, if I have that single composable service, I can link up with multiple services as well. And these are, whether it be a UI or backend systems that I need to connect to. I can also chain multiple systems. So these can be my CRM systems. These can be relays or inputs or avenues into my backend ERP system or a database for that matter. It's just a service is a service at this juncture. So earlier I mentioned APIs. And APIs are a way for me to, if I have all those services, I need a way to expose it to my internal users, but also my potential partners. A lot of times now when we talk about services, it's not for services for my internal use, but for my partners, potentially my customers. I can charge for the data that I have, data that I've acquired, put together, and I can use API management to help me manage it. I can use Swagger to help document it, and that's part of the API management solution from Red Hat, is being able to expose and document the API services that I have, but also package, control, and monetize the services that I have available to me. I can meter it. I can limit the rate based on what they have. I can do a lot of things as it relates to these services with API management at the layer in front of my services. A directory of services that I can offer to my internal users and or my partners or end customers. So it's not just about integrating services that I created when I had SOA. It can be any type of service, just as I mentioned earlier. Ways of integrating these, whether on-prem, in the cloud, private cloud, and these services that I have, whether they're legacy type services or net new type of services, the Facebooks, the Twitters, a lot of rich information is coming from these. Customer sentiment, how they feel about what's happening with a particular topic, and being able to aggregate this information and make something of it and pull it into your organization without having to fully understand particular APIs or shielding my organization from changes in those APIs. The last piece I mentioned was we covered the flexibility, the reusability, and now we talk about scalability. Is how do I deploy all these services? As I mentioned earlier, I can use a Spring Boot, which was within the past couple of years, 5, 10 years. I can use Spring Boot. I can use a Java EE type deployment. I can use OSGI. Or using those technologies, I can also use a container as a way of deploying rather than using virtual machines, physical bare metal machines, or instances that I have in the cloud. I can bring it up a level and use containers to provide me with that immutable delivery. These are applications that I know this is exactly what this service does, and I can control it, and I can distribute and I can scale it accordingly. Because that gives me ability with containers is high availability, multi-tenancy, for instance. Maybe I need to have containers hosted in multiple systems, but also have the protection that if a service decides to go and consume more resources, I'm protected. I can have co-located or co-hosted services deployed within my organization. I can help scale it. I can do that rapid release because I have a platform to help facilitate that. Not just the integration aspect, but the runtime aspect as well, being able to host it in a container. And what that gives me is the ability to potentially leverage pipelines. Organizations today, I may have Jenkins or various other CI or continuous integration type tools that I can to work with my existing services. Jenkins does great at building my code, making sure it tests properly, that it builds properly, but what about the deployment aspect? I can tell Jenkins to connect to an external system and maybe spin up some VMs, or I can have Jenkins locally co-located with a container platform internally and be able to use the lifecycle within my application and build and deploy my services as necessary. I can build the services, whether that be 10 services, 5 services, 100 services, starting with source code. I'm able to pick it up from source code and end up with a deployed container that is servicing my application, my microservice. A series of services that may potentially chain and integrate together to provide a more higher level function. So when we talk about the overall Red Hat integration solution, it's focused around JBoss views, composed of primarily Apache Camel, but also the runtime pieces, deployed in potentially Spring Boot, OSGI with Apache Camel, or Java Enterprise Edition with JBoss EAP, and fronting those services with API management, and potentially running them in containers as well, as a way for me to rapidly deploy my services across any type of platform. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Makrand. As I continue integration, before we get to that piece, is as Makrand goes over these various pieces are the systems that we need to take into account. And with these systems are ERP systems, Salesforce systems, and being able to have a holistic solution to be able to treat these endpoints as necessary and connect to them where I need, whether that be a client or services that I deploy. So Makrand is going to kind of go over these various things that OSI has done around the technology and sort of the best practices and areas that they focus on.
Hi, everyone. I'm Makrand Pare. I'm working as a principal consultant with OSI. Thanks, Kent, for walking us through the entire technology stack and various integration patterns. So as Kent mentioned earlier, the use of microservices and the need of integrations. I'm going to walk you through a real life scenario of how do we go and approach an organization and tackle these various business processes scattered all through the organization's ecosystem and put a layer of integration As you can see from left to right, this organization has got various disjoint business processes scattered towards various business applications like Salesforce, the CRM system, we already know. Their ERP system is JD Edwards, which is legacy but still very popular amongst real estate. They have their homegrown custom OMS, order management systems, and of course, the various billing processes and whatnot. So let's go from left to right. The sales agent close an opportunity in Salesforce, and of course, which will lead for creation of a customer in JD Edwards. The service engineers can go and raise a work order inside their OMS system, which is their service order management systems, and of course, then the customers can track their orders within the Salesforce, and of course, the billing and invoices needs to be generated in their ERP system. So how do we automate and integrate these disjoint business applications written in definitely various and disjoint technology stacks by putting a couple of microservices and more importantly, a layer of integration between these organizations, and then which will enable them to share the information within the organization as well as across the organization, which is built on cloud platform like Salesforce, and I'm going to walk you through some other applications like Concur for their expense management. So next slide, please. So since Salesforce is the biggest slice of the pizza in this implementation, the business user gave us the following requirements, and definitely there are a lot of other requirements, but I'm just going to walk through the major Salesforce optimization features. So they had to enable the user profiles and permissions for roles and security. There is a new cool experience of Lightning user experience in Salesforce, which is very popular amongst the modern sales agents. Of course, there's a DocuSign integration and order approvals within the Salesforce, but this also requires some kind of interaction with their other business applications. And of course, the process enhancements and integrations with other systems. So talking about these optimization of Salesforce, but then how it is impacting the other business applications, and without impacting the business applications, how do we control the transfer of these information across the organization? So in the next slide, we're gonna show you what are the value added by putting a layer of integration. Of course, Kent walked us through the various aspects of microservices. There's a layer of integration, there's container-based deployments, and of course there are API management. But how does that translate into the real business scenarios? Of course, the first one is automation of code to cash process. So Salesforce has got a very well documented set of APIs, which we can expose as a code to other applications. How we can leverage those APIs using the layer of integration to create the cache process in their other ERP systems. Of course, the reduction and removal of data entry errors. A real-time scenario is sales agents had to enter a lot of data inside the Salesforce, and most of this information was coming from their business applications, like the product information, the product code, their system locations. We were able to expose a microservices coming from this legacy application to the Salesforce, and our Salesforce application developers were able to give a pick list to our sales entry agents, as opposed to make them type on a plain text box, which definitely reduced a lot of data entry errors. And of course, removal of repetitive manual processes. An example is sales engineers creating a sales order in Salesforce, but then the same thing has to be manually entered by an accountant in the JD Edwards system. So why do we have two screens for one business process? Of course, by putting a layer of integration and seamlessly integrating those APIs, we were able to remove the manual processes. And of course, integration of the work order from their legacy OMS system, and of course the billing system, was automated by using JBoss Fuse integration layer. So having seen the various business benefits of putting an integration layer, I'm going to walk you through the real-time integration architecture, which Red Hat team has helped us to put together. As we can see, a layer of middleware is a lightweight JBoss integration platform where services are deployed in various containers. As you can see, taking down one container would have no impact in the business information flow because one container goes down, the other one comes in. It's seamless integration between the various business applications. As we saw earlier, that this layer of integration provides integration between any kind of application. So we have legacy systems in JD Edwards, which exposes its services using SOAP. Same time, we have modern application like Salesforce, but which also support REST as well as SOAP. There is an expense management system, Concur, which has got the API exposed through the REST. And of course, we have other systems which are homegrown systems like OMS. They're written pure open stacks like Pare, PHP, MySQL, and LAMP. So how we were able to put this middleware solution in between, and hence we're able to share that information across various business applications. As you can see, JD Edwards has got a lot of legacy business logic built into it, and we do not want to change that business logic because a lot of functionality has been moved into the Salesforce, and some of the expenses are also moved into the other cloud management system, Concur. The key to this integration was exposing the business services, which is the BSS, the framework of Oracle JD Edwards. We could only get them exposed as a SOAP service, but thanks to the modern as well as legacy support of JBoss integration platform, that we were able to consume those services and then transform and enrich them with more information within the integration layer and then expose them to Salesforce as well as Concur using a concept of microservices. So that's how we were able to get the best of the both worlds, a real solid billing and order management system of a legacy JD Edwards system, but at the same time, coolness and lightness of a Salesforce, which exposes various features to the end user in a cloud-based solution, same as Concur. The other good example was the systems which were built in-house. Now they are legacy plus modern, semi-modern systems built on Pare, PHP, MySQL, one of the really fastest growing technologies across various organizations. We were able to make the use of the Pare and PHP's REST support, and we exposed them as REST services. But at the same time, putting a layer of integration, we were still securing the homegrown application of being exposed to the external world. But at the same time, we were able to expose the business information to the external world. So you get the best of the both worlds again. You are securing your legacy data and your business data, but at the same time, you were able to expose that business information using a layer of middleware. So this is a real-time implementation of what Kent just talked about using various technology stack of JBoss integration platform. In the next slide, I'm going to talk about the various other integration offerings which OSI has to offer. Of course, Oracle E-Business Suite is one of the most popular ERP systems in the entire world for so far, and we have integrated a lot of business applications around E-Business Suite. Of course, a modern version of E-Business Suite is the cloud ERP, as we just saw, that a lot of these things are moving to cloud, and we have a lot of experiences. Since we already have a good understanding of the E-Business Suite integration on the on-prem, we're able to use the same business logic and then the cloud integration using various integration services. We have done a lot of integration on both on-prem as well as on cloud. Teleo integration. This is a very popular talent acquisition system over the cloud. We have done various set of integration. Teleo has got a very specific scenario. It has got two versions of it. One is Business Edition and the other one is Enterprise Edition. Both these products provide a lot of functionality across to the recruiters and hiring managers. The only difference is the protocols. Business Edition offers a SOAP-based, and the Enterprise version offers a REST-based integration. But through various Fusion middleware as well as Red Hat's technology stack, we are able to integrate both of these versions seamlessly with other business applications. AD, Active Directory Integration, has got its well-documented APIs, and it's just like a matter of knowing those APIs and integrating it to different applications. Salesforce, I've already talked about it. ADP, one of the fastest payroll applications I've seen so far. They have exposed their APIs in REST recently, but we had been doing their integration even when only the SOAP version of their APIs were available. And also, last but not the least, JD Edwards integration, which we just walked through in the last slide. So in the next slide, we just take on any questions and answers. So we have any?
Okay, thank you, Makrand. That's great. And to Kent as well, really appreciate your great overviews, both from a product standpoint as well as some implementation scenarios on the OSI side. So we have a couple of questions that have come through. The first one, I'm going to read them out. Kent, I think this will probably go your direction. This is from Michael, and it reads as follows. In our organization, we already have some simple functional services. If I incorporate some of what you described in JBoss Fuse, is that enough for a microservices architecture? Kent, is this yours?
Yeah, so from a JBoss Fuse perspective, it's definitely the initial pieces as it relates to microservices architecture, because there's a lot of other areas that one may need to focus on. But JBoss Fuse provides a lot of what you need from a deployment perspective, providing you with, for instance, the circuit breaker pattern, being able to, if services do go down, I have some level of measuring fault tolerance. But it's definitely a start. A lot of it comes down to, when we talk about microservices architecture, is how it's accepted within the organization, so similar to DevOps, the methodology, and making sure that I have everything in place, and I make my services available within the organization, and I divide the roles and responsibilities appropriately. So JBoss Fuse helps you create the services very quickly, giving you various integration patterns, as I mentioned earlier, but it's definitely a starting point as we kind of move into microservices architecture.
Awesome. Thanks, Ken. The second question I have is from Saurav, and it reads, what are the challenges with endpoint systems? And what are the challenges with microservices? Sounds like that might be for the Makrand side, implementation side. Makrand, can you answer that one?
Sure, John. Thanks for the question. So microservices, as Kent mentioned, the technology stack will definitely allow you to create microservices much easier than what you had to do through other platforms like SOA and SOAP. Having said that, the problem with microservices is pretty much every technology supports HTTP-based interaction, and that gives the business applications, like some homegrown business application, to avoid the layer of middleware solutions. So now, since everyone in the world is producing HTTP-based interaction, so people can say, oh, I have a small little Pare application or PHP application, and I can just connect through the Salesforce system directly. Why do I need this level of middleware? So that's where microservices making things so easy. Everyone wants to go on the route of point-to-point interaction, but what they don't know is if they start building point-to-point services, even though the services are so light, like using HTTP and REST and whatnot, soon it could be very unwieldy, and you will be like scratching your head, and you're going to have the same problem as what you would have in a point-to-point applications.
Okay, great. We have another one from Tom. What Fuse deployment options do you offer on-prem or cloud? And do you see ERP movement to cloud to also move to a iPaaS deployment model for integration? What drivers are you seeing driving the move to iPaaS if that is the case?
So I'll take the first piece, Makrand, you can kind of follow up. So the movement to iPaaS is being able to take it to the next level, meaning I don't even want to deal with having to figure out how I want to deploy my microservices or my services. I want to do a simple integration between a Salesforce system and a backend system, and I can just wire it using a pre-built integration, drag and drop, and the underlying platform manages that for me. I don't have to think about where it gets deployed, how to manage it. It's managed by the provider, the service provider. As it relates to Fuse and deploying it, I can deploy it, whether it be on-prem, in the cloud, or private cloud. It doesn't matter. It comes down to what you currently have in your organization or what direction you want to move to in your organization.
Awesome. Makrand, did you want to add anything else to that response for Tom?
Yeah, sure. As Kent mentioned, that things are definitely moving towards cloud, and with JBoss integration layer, it's so easy for you guys to build things on-prem and move it to cloud. But also with other integration platforms, what we are seeing, things are shifting towards cloud. And if you have a layer of integration, it's so easy for you to put your integration services to the cloud. And even if you are not putting your integration to cloud, somehow, as what we see in our ERP systems, a lot of on-prem ERP systems are moving towards Oracle ERP. At that time, integration layer makes it even more sense. It helps you to connect your services to the cloud, and what an easier way to connect to cloud with having an integration layer as opposed to with not having.
Awesome, great. Thank you. Well, it looks like we don't have any further questions coming in the queue. So with that, I'm going to move to the final slide, which is a quick promotion of OSI Consulting and the technology services that we offer. Just real quickly, we've been around for a quarter century at this point and have over 1,300 employees worldwide across our 17 locations. A large portion of our employees are part of our development teams, both onshore in the U.S. as well as offshore. Mainly, the offshore development team is located in our many offices in India. We're excited to be a strong alliance partner of Red Hat and unique product offering that they bring to the table. So we really appreciate the Red Hat folks partnering with us as an alliance partner. If you would like to discuss this or any other technology topics in more detail, please reach out to us. You can always gather deeper insights into our services on the OSI side by going to the OSI website, osius.com. You can email us and phone us as well if you prefer. All that information is right there. I wanted to thank Ken and Makrand for sharing their insights today. This webinar has been recorded, and you will be able to find it on the OSI Consulting YouTube page within the next 48 hours. The link to YouTube can be found on our website, and you will also see the link to YouTube in a thank you email that we will send as a follow-up. So you will be able to access this content again, both from the PowerPoint as well as the recording on YouTube. So I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. We look forward to continuing to provide thought leadership across a wide variety of evolving technology solutions. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one. Thanks, everybody.